What's up everyone, Criddle here, and in this video we're going over the Cleric class in Monsters and Memories. We will cover how I would build this character and stat priority, the Cleric role in a group, how well the Cleric can solo, and finally taking a look at some of the skills and abilities. The Cleric is primarily a healer and has the most efficient heals in the game. In addition to healing, the Cleric has other spells which protect from various elements, bolster health, and in some cases make a character immune to physical damage for a short time. The Cleric is also one of two classes in the game that can resurrect another player, and of these two classes, the only one that can recover over 50% of the experience lost on death. As for race, the Cleric can be Dwarf, Gnome, Halfling, or Human. I suspect Deep Dwarf and Deep Gnome to also be options in the future. As with all other classes, race has no bearing on your stats or other abilities, so choose whichever one you like the best. Looking at stats, we can see that Wisdom and Charisma are slightly higher than other stats, indicating these are important for the class. I would agree with Wisdom, as this would be the primary stat for the Cleric's mana pool and would max this out. Charisma, on the other hand, seems more of a roleplay or lore stat, as it has little to no effect on the class itself. Instead of maxing Charisma, I would focus more on Stamina and Agility, giving the Cleric a bit more survivability, as Clerics are literally the life of the party, and if they go down, oftentimes the party goes along with them. Clerics would not benefit much from Strength or Dexterity, as they most often would be meditating to build mana rather than hitting enemies. If you do plan to solo with your Cleric, which I do not recommend, having some extra Strength could come in handy for some added damage. The major combat traits, I believe there are three options. The first is Wise, as this will increase the Cleric's Wisdom by 5%, which basically increases the Cleric's mana pool. This could be the difference in one or two additional heals, possibly saving the party from a wipe. Do note that the active ability of Wise will only increase your maximum mana and not the amount you have to spend, making the active ability not worth using at this time. The second option is Hardiness, which increases stun resistance by 15% and gives it an active ability which removes stun and makes you immune to stun for 15 seconds. This could be extremely useful if the Cleric is stunned and needs to get off a spell immediately. Third option would be Magic Resistance. The reason I call this one out over the other resistance traits is because this would affect things like Mesmerize or Fear effects. If a Cleric is mezzed or feared, it can be devastating for the group as they cannot heal the party. For any of these traits, we must also consider that the active ability would need to go on your ability bar, which is limited to 10 abilities at any given time, and each one has a fairly long cooldown. This would limit the abilities at your disposal if you choose to have it on your bar. That all said, I would most likely choose Wise, as the bonus mana only increases as you get better gear, and I would just not use the active ability freeing up space in my ability bar. Clerics also already have an ability that makes them immune to all attacks for 15 seconds, as well as removes stun, mez, and fear effects, which I believe all clerics should have on their ability bar at all times. Moving on to the minor non-combat trait. Here we want to look at skills that we want to max but won't necessarily use often, as this trait will increase the skill 25% faster. For Cleric, I would choose Defender, as I will want to have as much survivability as I can for when, not if, enemies attack me. In a game like Monsters and Memories, the healer often is attacked as they draw a lot of aggro using their heals, and they need to be able to take a hit. Another option here could be Shieldman, but depending on itemization, you may end up using a two-handed weapon or some other item in your offhand. Most of your casting skills should level up easily as you play, especially Abjuration, which is for buffs, or Alteration, which are your heals. Channeling will also level up naturally with every spell you cast, so it shouldn't be an issue. If you wanted to choose a casting skill, however, Evoker could be an option, as Clerics do have a few direct damage spells at their arsenal, especially when up against undead. Personally, I would ignore that skill unless you are planning to solo a lot, in which case it will level up as you use it. Major non-combat trait is generally the same for every class, and I would choose Master Artisan if I plan to do trade skills, or Forage for the free food and water. Fast and slow metabolism, in my opinion, are not worth it, as the food is fairly cheap and easy to obtain, and currently Endurance doesn't do much other than allow you to jump a few extra times. While Infravision and Ultravision can be nice for seeing in the dark, you can also use light sources or adjust your monitor to compensate. Iron Lungs is another one that can easily be replaced with the Endure Breath spell. Finally, if you choose Halfling, Sneak could be an option, as Clerics only get invisibility to undead. And finally, we have the minor non-combat trait, which is essentially Dealer's Choice. Choose whichever trait you want based on the trade skill you want to level, and if you want to level several, find the one that would be most difficult. For me, I would choose Alchemy, as finding ingredients can be difficult, but the choice is yours. Now let's look at some of the skills of the Cleric. The Cleric doesn't get much in the way of combat skills, but you will start off with your basic offense, defense, and bludgeoning, which means Clerics will only use blunt weapons like maces and hammers. In addition to that, Clerics do have all of the casting skills starting at level 1, which you will want to level up to prevent fizzles, which is when a spell fails to cast but still consumes mana. At level 4, you will learn Meditation, which increases the amount of mana you gain while sitting, and you will be sitting a lot. In fact, the only time you should be standing as a cleric is when you are healing, curing, or buffing your party. Very rarely do clerics contribute to the DPS of a party, unless, like I mentioned before, you are fighting undead, in which case they do decent damage. I would still leave the DPS up to the rest of the party and conserve your mana for when the party gets a bit overwhelmed and needs the extra healing. As for spells, the cleric is primarily a healer, and most of their spells revolve around keeping the party alive. Starting at level 1, you have access to heals, cures, protection buffs, and HP bolster buffs. As the cleric levels, they will gain access to additional line of heals, which are the most mana efficient in the game, as well as damage reduction buffs, helping to make healing against tougher enemies easier. In addition to their healing, clerics also have spells to damage, snare, or fear the undead, as well as invisibility versus undead. The last spell I want to call out for Cleric is Stun. Stun is a powerful ability in Monsters and Memories, as it will not only interrupt spellcasting, but completely stop the target from doing any actions for 4 seconds. Clerics and Paladins are the only class with access to this spell at this time, and Paladins don't receive it until level 24. To sum up, the Cleric is a fantastic healer and will be in demand by most parties as the primary healer, especially as you get higher level and fight tougher enemies. Their healing efficiency and HP buffs are unmatched by other classes, and everyone will want to be friends with at least one high-level Cleric simply for their Resurrection line, as it will recover lost XP on death, and in Monsters and Memories, death is all but guaranteed. Clerics will be primarily group-oriented, and I would encourage anyone looking to play a Cleric to plan on grouping as much as possible. While they can solo and do have decent spells versus undead, Clerics are possibly one of, if not the worst solo class in the game, but their demand in groups more than make up for it. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the content or found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and follow. Also, be sure to tune in to my Twitch streams where we'll be playing and chatting about Monsters and Memories as well as many other games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!